I never knew heartbreak could sound like scissors cutting through my hair while I was 8 months pregnant. My husband held me down, and his mistress laughed while she hacked away at my curls, calling me ugly, useless, a burden he needed to get rid of. Then they shoved me outside like trash, swollen, powerless, shaking on the pavement. But here's what they didn't know. The moment 3 black SUVs pulled up and the doors opened one by one, their little victory died instantly. Because the person who stepped out wasn't there to save me. He was there to destroy everything they touched. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The first SUV door opened, and the sound echoed down our quiet suburban street like a judge's gavel. A tall man stepped out, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my husband's car. His eyes were cold, the kind of cold that makes your blood stop moving. He didn't smile. He didn't rush. He just looked at me sitting there on the driveway, my hands cradling my belly, my hair in uneven chunks around my shoulders. Then he looked at Michael, my husband, standing in the doorway with that woman pressed against his side. The mistress's smile started to fade. I watched it happen in real time. Her hand, which had been stroking Michael's chest, went still. Michael tried to stand taller, tried to puff out his chest like he always did when he felt threatened. But his voice cracked when he spoke. "Who the hell are you?" The man didn't answer. He just said my name. Grace. That's when I saw it. Michael's face drained of every drop of color. His lips parted, but no words came out. And that's when I realized something I'd been too blind to see for months. Michael had been hiding something from me all along, something big enough to make him look like he'd just seen a ghost. Let me take you back 6 years. I met Michael at a charity fundraiser in downtown Charlotte. I was 24, fresh out of grad school, working at a non-profit that helped underserved communities get access to education. He was 29, charming, with a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He worked in sales, or so he said. He drove a decent car, wore nice clothes, and talked about his dreams of starting his own business someday. I didn't come from money, but I wasn't struggling either. My parents had passed away when I was 19, a car accident that took them both in one terrible night. They left me a modest inheritance, nothing extravagant, but enough to pay for school and start my life. I'd invested it carefully, saved most of it, used some to buy a small house. I was independent, proud of what I'd built. Michael seemed to admire that about me. He'd say things like, "You're so strong, Grace. You don't need anyone." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Looking back now, I realize he was testing me, seeing how alone I really was. We got married 2 years later, a small ceremony with a few friends. I didn't have siblings, no aunts or uncles nearby, just me. Michael's family came, his mother, his 2 sisters, but they were distant, cold even. I thought maybe they just needed time to warm up to me. I was wrong. The first year of marriage was good. We laughed, we traveled, we talked about having kids someday. But then things started to shift. Small things at first. He'd forget to tell me where he was going. He'd come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. When I'd ask, he'd get defensive, accuse me of being paranoid, controlling. "You're always so suspicious, Grace. Can't you just trust me?" So I did. I trusted him. Even when I found the receipt in his jacket pocket from a hotel I'd never been to. Even when I saw the text messages he quickly deleted. Even when our bank account started shrinking, and he'd brush it off, saying business expenses, investments, things I wouldn't understand. I told myself I was overreacting. That marriage required trust. That love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Then I got pregnant, and everything got worse. He stopped touching me, stopped looking at me. He'd stay out later, sometimes not coming home until morning. When I'd cry, when I'd beg him to talk to me, he'd say I was being hormonal, dramatic, needy. "You're not the woman I married anymore, Grace." One night, about 7 months into my pregnancy, I was folding laundry in our bedroom when I found a key I didn't recognize. It was small, silver, attached to a keychain with the initials L.M. I asked Michael about it. He snatched it out of my hand so fast I stumbled backward. "Stay out of my stuff," he snapped. That was the first time I was truly scared of him. Then she showed up. Her name was Lauren Mitchell. Blonde, tall, with a sharp smile and sharper eyes. She worked at Michael's company, or so she claimed. I met her at a work event he dragged me to when I was 8 months pregnant, swollen feet stuffed into flats, my dress barely fitting over my belly. She shook my hand and said, "Oh, you're the wife. Michael talks about you all the time." But the way she said it, the way her eyes flicked over me like I was something to pity, I knew. I knew she was the reason he didn't come home anymore. I just didn't know how deep it went. 2 weeks later, I went into false labor. The contractions were intense, terrifying. I called Michael 17 times. He didn't answer. I drove myself to the hospital, gripping the steering wheel, praying my baby would be okay. The nurses kept asking, "Where's your husband? Is someone coming?" I lied. I said he was on his way. He showed up 6 hours later, smelling like her perfume, his shirt wrinkled. He didn't apologize. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He just said, "False alarm, right?" I knew it wasn't serious. That's when I should have left. I know that now. But I was tired. I was scared. I was 8 months pregnant with nowhere to go and no one to call. So I stayed. And that decision almost destroyed me. 3 days before the scissors, I found the folder. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for our insurance documents because my doctor needed them for the delivery. Michael kept all our paperwork in his office, a room he'd started locking recently. But that day, he'd left it open. I walked in, opened the filing cabinet, and there it was, a manila folder labeled Property Transfer. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were documents, legal documents, transferring the deed of our house, my house, the one I'd bought with my inheritance, into Lauren Mitchell's name. The date on the transfer was 2 months ago. My knees buckled. I sat down on the floor, the papers scattered around me, and I couldn't breathe. He'd stolen my house, the house my parents' death had paid for, the house I'd worked so hard to keep. He'd given it to her. There were other documents too, bank statements showing he'd been withdrawing money from our joint account for months, thousands of dollars at a time, receipts for jewelry I'd never seen, for trips I'd never taken, for a car registered in her name. And then, at the bottom of the folder, I found something that made my stomach turn, a handwritten note, in Michael's handwriting. It said, "Once the baby's born, file for divorce. She won't fight it. She has no one." I sat there on that office floor for an hour, maybe more, just staring at those words. She has no one. He was right. I didn't have anyone. My parents were gone. I had a few friends, but no one close enough to call in a crisis. No siblings, no family. I was alone, and he knew it. He'd been planning this, planning to take everything from me, to wait until I gave birth, until I was at my most vulnerable, and then leave me with nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront him, but something inside me, some survival instinct I didn't know I had, told me to stay quiet, to wait, to document everything. So I took pictures of every document with my phone. I put the folder back exactly how I found it, and I started planning. I opened a separate bank account he didn't know about and transferred what little money I had left. I called a lawyer, a woman named Sharon who specialized in family law, and I told her everything. She told me to keep gathering evidence, to not let him know I knew, to protect myself and my baby first. Men like this, she said, they don't stop until they've taken everything. You need to be smarter than him. So I was. For 3 days, I played the role of the obedient, exhausted wife. I cooked his meals. I smiled when he came home. I didn't ask where he'd been. And then, on the 3rd day, Lauren showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She used a key, my key, the one Michael must have given her. I was in the kitchen, making tea, when I heard the door open. I turned, and there she was, standing in my living room like she owned it. I guess, legally, she thought she did. "Grace," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the counter. Michael walked in behind her. He didn't look surprised to see her there. He looked annoyed that I was. "Lauren and I have been talking," he said, not even meeting my eyes, "and we think it's time you found somewhere else to stay." I laughed. I actually laughed. It wasn't funny, but the absurdity of it, the cruelty, it just came out. "This is my house, Michael." Lauren smiled. "Actually, it's mine now. Didn't he tell you?" That's when I felt it. The rage. It started in my chest and spread through my whole body like fire. I wanted to lunge at her. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed calm. I looked at Michael and said, "You really think you're going to get away with this?" He shrugged. "You have no one, Grace. No family, no money, no fight left. Just sign the papers when they come, and we'll make this easy for you." That's when Lauren stepped closer. She reached out, and before I could move, she grabbed a handful of my hair. "You're pathetic," she whispered, and then she pulled out scissors from her purse. What happened next was a blur. Michael held my arms while Lauren cut. I screamed, I begged, I cried, but they didn't stop until my hair was in uneven, jagged pieces around my shoulders. Then Michael dragged me to the front door and shoved me outside. I fell onto the driveway, my hands scraping against the concrete. I heard the door lock behind me. I sat there, sobbing, my whole body shaking, my baby kicking inside me like she could feel my terror. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. I didn't call the police. I didn't call my lawyer. I called the one number I'd been too proud to call before, a number I'd found 3 months ago in my mother's old address book, a number connected to a name I barely remembered. My mother had 3 brothers. I'd never met them. She'd had a falling out with them before I was born, something about family business, pride, old wounds. She never talked about them. But when I was going through her things after she died, I found letters from them, checking in, asking about me, offering help. I'd been too angry, too grieving, to respond, but I'd kept the number. And now, with nowhere else to turn, I dialed it. A deep voice answered. "Grace?" I couldn't even speak. I just cried. "Where are you?" he asked. I told him. "Don't move. We're coming." 20 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up. The man who stepped out first was my uncle, Jonathan. I didn't recognize him at first. I'd only seen him in old photos, but the resemblance to my mother was undeniable. Same eyes, same strong jawline. He walked over to me, knelt down, and gently helped me to my feet. "I'm sorry we weren't there sooner," he said quietly, "but we're here now." 2 more men stepped out from the other SUVs. My other uncles, Daniel and Marcus. All 3 of them were tall, well-dressed, and carried themselves like men who were used to being in control. I later learned they owned a private security and investment firm worth millions. They'd been looking for me for years, but my mother had moved, changed her name after the falling out, and I'd been impossible to track down until I called. Jonathan looked at the house, then at me, at my chopped hair, my tear-streaked face, my swollen belly. His expression didn't change, but his voice turned to ice. "Who did this to you?" I told him everything. About Michael, about Lauren, about the house, the money, the documents. I told him about the note. She has no one. Marcus made a phone call. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars arrived. Then a lawyer, one of their lawyers, showed up with a briefcase full of documents. Michael opened the door, finally, probably because he saw the police. He tried to act calm, tried to play the concerned husband. "Officers, my wife is having a mental breakdown. She's been very unstable lately. Pregnancy hormones, you know." Jonathan stepped forward. "I'm her uncle, Jonathan Hayes, and I'm here to inform you that you're currently illegally occupying property that belongs to my niece." Michael's face went pale. "That's not true. The house is in Lauren's name." The lawyer opened his briefcase. "Actually, the property transfer was fraudulent. Grace's signature was forged. We have the original documents, and a handwriting expert has already confirmed it. This transfer is void." Lauren tried to run. She actually turned and tried to bolt out the back door, but Daniel was already there. He didn't touch her. He just stood in her way, arms crossed, and said calmly, "I wouldn't." The police arrested Michael for fraud, forgery, and theft. They arrested Lauren as an accomplice. As they were being put into the squad cars, Michael looked at me one last time. "You set me up," he said. I shook my head. "No, Michael, you did this to yourself." Then Marcus leaned in close to him and said, "And by the way, we've frozen all your accounts. Every dollar you stole from her, every dime you spent on your little girlfriend, we're taking it back. You're going to prison with nothing." Michael's face crumpled. He started crying, begging, saying it was a mistake, that he loved me. But it was too late. The squad car doors slammed shut, and they drove away. 3 weeks later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I named her Hope. My uncles were there, all three of them, pacing in the waiting room like nervous first-time fathers. When the nurse brought Hope out, Jonathan held her with tears in his eyes. "She looks just like your mother," he whispered. I moved into a new house, one my uncles helped me buy, in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. I started therapy. I started healing. Michael pleaded guilty to avoid a trial and was sentenced to 5 years. Lauren lost her job, her reputation, everything. I didn't feel happy about it. I just felt free. I learned something through all of this. I learned that being alone doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you have no one. Sometimes, the people who are meant to be in your life are just waiting for you to reach out. And sometimes, God lets people break you so He can show them He's the one who will rebuild you. I look at Hope now, sleeping peacefully in her crib, and I know she'll grow up knowing she comes from strength, from survival, from women and men who don't give up. And that's the greatest gift I could ever give her. So I want to ask you something. What would you have done in my place? Would you have fought back, or would you have walked away? Do you believe people like Michael and Lauren get what they deserve, or do you think karma takes too long? Have you ever trusted the wrong person, someone who made you feel small, powerless, like you had no one? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of your own strength, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all need to be reminded sometimes that we're stronger than we think. And if you think this family story was intense, wait until you hear what happens in next week's video. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.